Are you ready? Okay. All right. Good hot afternoon. I'm super impressed for everyone who made it here because you were here on a very, very nice day and with very bad parking. So we're really sorry about the parking. I'll try to remember to announce this again at the end, but next year we're going to go to Claggett Creek because this is, I know you're like, oh yeah, you can do it, 5 minutes. But because school is going to have such construction that we think it's better to keep anything that we can out of here and to other places. So, and then I'll announce again, I know we announced it last time, that we aren't doing the live stream, but we are videotaping. That's not the right word. Whatever it is. It will be uploaded to YouTube tomorrow because YouTube requires a certain number of followers, and if you don't have 1,000, it doesn't let you do it. So it will be on tomorrow with the same links and everything. And I was just asking the question, has the videoing been a good use of our time? And we get between 100 and 200 views afterwards. So I think that's worth it if 100 to 200 people beyond this group hear about it. So I couldn't believe it. This was the last one, so I didn't set up a way to give feedback. But I will have Christy email out tomorrow or the next couple days to say what feedback would you give us about the year, with topics relevant. We just want to kind of hear what's on your mind about the communication groups, and we'll modify and adjust if we have some consistent themes for next year. Love it if the same group of people continued, but if it's time to hand it to somebody else as well, that's okay as well. So I am going to turn it over to Mike first because we want to talk a little bit about construction. That'll always be on our mind, just so you get a chance to know what's going to happen specifically at North, but also what the design process has been, because now we're going on to other schools with the design process. And so it's great to know kind of what to expect if you're going to be in one of those schools. And I'm hearing from people really positive feedback about the design team process. Before it, people get really anxious, but once it gets started and gets rolling a couple meetings in, it seems to be going really well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. And so here we are at North, right? And the parking is tighter now and all of that. There's portables where the softball fields used to be, right? And so that's interesting. McNary's in the same situation. So remember, McNary and North were the first two high schools. They're part of the first 5 projects that initiated the program. And so we're into early demolition at North. So we got the camera posted on the stadium. And have you ever seen these, right, projects where at the end of it, it's like 14 months worth of work in like a minute and a half, ants running around, building goes down, building goes up. We're doing that. So let's give you a little test drive of what. Yeah, you can slow. Okay, so this is the weight room for those of you. So here's the field, right? Railroad tracks right here, Parish over here. This is where the tennis courts used to be. We'll talk about relocating them here in a second. But this is the weight room. This is the auxiliary gym behind it. Okay, so that's the first thing that's going to go down. I'm building this up. It may not be all that dramatic, but watch this crane. Once you see a crane start coming up over here, things are going to happen. Oh, we slowed it down for this. Oh, there you go. There it is. Here it comes. And boom, 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 and zaboom. There you go. That's about it right there. No. Yeah, well, that was good. You can slow it down. There's a bar over here. This is on our website, by the way. That's why we wanted to show you. And you can do the speed over here and all those kinds of things. We also wanted to make sure that you knew that our website for the bond projects has a ton of information. Communications is doing a great job keeping all of the projects. So every year we have cohorts of projects, right? The major capital construction projects, and you can drill in on any year, on any project to see information. Let's do the 20 projects, and we'll talk about some of those. You can see where the projects are. If I scroll down too much, it'll zoom in and out, but you can see where the projects are. You can hit a bubble and get some more information. This isn't moving up and down for me all that well, but I would encourage you to check the website out for information. It's got all the bond history. You know, lots of people have questions about how we got to where we are and what's going on. We just really try to focus them there. So that's kind of where we are with North. Lots of good work here. You may not know this, but Olinger is now not a pool. Okay, it's the building previously known as Olinger Pool. We haven't named it yet, but what it is good instructional space now. So filled it in. I think North is thinking about keeping it as part of their athletic complex in the future. And so that's an example of when the North design team kicked in. We had a conceptual master plan, and I've got a copy of McKay's here because I want to guide you through the design process and some of the changes that can happen during the schematic design. During the design team process at North, one of the issues was, hey, look, if the gym goes down, what do we do for PE, right? That's pretty important. And so there are lots of ways to take care of that, none of them perfect, by the way. I mean, nothing really replaces a gym but a gym. Well, we're not going to have that in place until, the fall of 20, right? A fall of 19, I'm sorry. I almost messed things up a bit here. Anyways, so here's the deal. We could bring in a mega complex of portables and try to create PE space, but we had an asset right here on site, and it was the square footage at Olinger. So now Olinger provides the auxiliary PE space instead of creating a temporary structure, which would have cost additional funds as well. So that's one example of a design team kicking in during the schematic design process and helping us determine some solutions that will really work for them. So the McKay team has just finished up, and you may remember how many of you saw these conceptual master plans for your school if you're in a construction school? Remember we came out, or you came and reviewed them, you gave us feedback. We also got feedback on these from the community. These plans helped shape the bond and shape the size of the bond for the board, right? So when you look at a McKay, this was the conceptual master plan for McKay. You can see where the addition was originally conceived on the back of the school. Right? So for those of you who are familiar with McKay, the front entrance is right here. So the major addition was in the back, right? Makes sense when you're just at the conceptual master planning piece, because what you want to do is you want to identify the needed square footage. And the best positioning at the time looked like this. Okay, it's changed. So during the design team process, this one's going to be a little harder to see, but what I want to do is show you, thank you, Bob. What I want to show you is the design team really took a hard look at this and said, hey, the first question they asked us was, there's a building here that we call the Annex that was put in place to help one of our alt ed programs years ago, right? Was never part of McKay's campus. Well, we've since found another facility. It's the Riverfront Learning Center for alt ed program. And so the first question that they asked was, can we have this? Can this be part of our campus? They're using it now. It's basically a math center, because as we all know, math is a struggle in 9th and 10th grade. And so a great success here. And of course, the design team asks questions, rolls up through the bond program management team, through me to Christy. We make decisions about changes, right? And so in the design process. So the question was asked, can this be part of McKay? The answer was yes. And so now this is officially part of the McKay campus. Well, if you have the entire new wing back here, can you imagine the passing time from here to there? Right? So now we're in the design process. We're moving We're reconceptualizing the conceptual master plan. Does that make sense? Now, we still have constraints, right? We still have scope, schedule, and budget constraints. So the design team started working and reconfiguring where these additional square footage spaces would go. And so now what you have here is a natural flow. This is where all their portables are right now, right? No more portables at McKay, right? That's a good thing. You've got a natural flow, a 2-story wing. This will be all their new science labs. So they'll have 11 new science labs. There will be a new science wing at McKay. They'll also have, they're scheduled for the only library replacement of our high school. So they'll have a 21st century media center here as well. And what the design team really wanted to do, they took pride of ownership in their campus. They want, as soon as you come off of Lancaster and you start driving to McKay, you want to know what you're going to see? You're going to see this plaza in the state-of-the-art 2-story media center in this new wing. We're going to reconfigure the front entrance so it will look and feel entirely different while honoring the existing building. That's the design team process. Now, were there additional resources necessary to pull all this off? Yes, and again, that went up through the process that I discussed. And so to be able to do that, we had to go through the decision-making approval process, actually added some resources to make this happen at McKay, because guess what? Now's the time. Now's the time to do this, not 5 years later when we wish we would have done it, right? And the cost escalates at least 6% a year. So the dollar that you spent here now costs you $6, right? Overall, well, you can do the math, but the bottom line is the dollar you spend today buys you more than the dollar you spend 6 years from now. I think that's just basic budgeting and finance. And so really good example, we're going to reconfigure this whole area. The new CTE center will be back here for McKay. We'll also, how many people have been to McKay in the library? That's now part of an expanded commons area because we got a new library here, right? So now think about that new feel when you walk in the door of McKay. It's not going to feel cramped like it does now in these areas. The new auxiliary gym and weight room will open out into the athletic compound and the complex. The tennis courts will be relocated up here. Here's LPC, just to give you some orientation. And if anyone, Bob, you're doing an awesome job, by the way. If anyone has ever been at McKay during release time, you know that all of the traffic queues the whole way to the traffic signal here. So it's 2 lanes out, 2 lanes around the corner, and then it necks down to 1 lane here as you do the right turnout, and it stays 1 lane until you're almost up to the traffic signal where it opens up to the left for a left-hand turn. We're going to reconfigure the flow here, so we're going to cut that off and keep it 2 lanes the whole way out. Again, better traffic flow, better mobility. We feel it's a safer environment, again, because what we want to do is make sure that whether you're walking, riding a bike, or driving, you're not commingling in the same space. So that's kind of where we are. We'll add some classrooms to the annex as well. So during one last piece on this one, during the boundary process, we did not count this building in McKay's capacity. So when you look at those numbers and you see in 10 years McKay being 98% at capacity, didn't include this. By including this, we dropped them down to 90%. So that's another big benefit. And it was the design team and the design team process that brought all this to light for us as a district. We're having the same conversations at South. We had them at North, which again changed some of the design features here. And we'll finish up, we're having them at Auburn as well. Auburn Elementary is our largest elementary school project. So all of those design teams are well underway, and most of them have wrapped up on the big projects. So that's kind of where we are. We wanted to show you the difference between where we started with our original thinking. Once you get into the design process, lots of things open up, possibilities open up. We don't have unlimited resources, but remember when we went out into the bond market for the first issuance, we received $65 million in premiums, market premiums. That's in addition to the $619.7 million that we were authorized by the voters. So we've got a little flexibility to adjust program as we move through the design process, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that costs are escalating. We're up around 6, could be 7%. Every time you hear the rumblings of tariffs, that means companies are protecting themselves by charging a premium for their products. So we've got to get through this next couple of years to really have a solid sense of where we are from a cost perspective, but we feel pretty good about the allocations we've made and the overall financing of the program.
I just wanted to mention, my 3 kids are alumni, North alumni students. They all went through here. So I saw that video, that time-lapse video a couple weeks ago, and so I called them. I said, you guys have to check this out, because at Christmas we came and took pictures. I told them they don't live here in the state of Oregon anymore. They work down in California, but I said, we have to take pictures. It's not going to look like your school. They have just played that over and over, texting each other, you know, little comments, memories and stuff. It was kind of something I didn't expect, but it was kind of neat. So they'll be checking that,
Good.
checking your progress.
Good.
Yeah, it was
That's
kind of
awesome.
fun.
Yes.
I'm just curious if they've had to give up parking spaces for these additions at the high schools.
Well, North will, and right now you are, during construction, things are going to be really tight. But we're in a partnership agreement with the Church of the Nazarene on Market. And so there's additional spots, about 130 there. They're not charging us for it, but it could provide additional parking if people were willing to walk 3 blocks. So, but that's a challenge. We get it, but it is there. And then afterwards, North will have more than it does now, but it won't be enough. It's never enough. In fact, schools that you would think it would be enough, what do you think their biggest concern is? Parking. North and South, you know, that's what happens when you're a neighborhood, you know, you're built into a neighborhood like both. But it certainly adds a charm to the whole situation.
And they'll have more.
You'll have more, but don't ask me how many, and it won't be enough. But
What about McKay, though? Does it look like that tennis court was going to be in some of the parking?
no, with the McKay piece, they'll have essentially the same. Yeah, because right now, this is parking. You just have the lanes come out this way. This is the hedgerow between LPC, and this is like dead space right now. So we're gonna integrate that into the whole parking and traffic flow scheme. Yeah. So they'll have similar parking at McKay. McKay has a lot though, but it's used a lot. I mean, with LPC and McKay co-located, it's used a ton. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Super. Well, we'll keep you updated along the way. All right. Thank you.
Okay, budget. Did anyone already watch the budget message? There you go. It's okay that you didn't. That would be weird. If everyone raised their hand, that would be weird. So I want to walk you through where we are in the budget process and kind of what we've added and what we're still adding and where we are. So the 23rd of April, given what we knew at the time, which we were still at the governor's budget on the 23rd of April, or the governor's proposed budget for the state school fund. And in that process, we had a little bit of subtraction of some things, but mostly additions. So I just want you to, I'm just going to walk you through these. We added we added 9 FTE at the middle school, licensed FTE. I'm going to hit the highlights rather than every single detail. A couple classified FTE at the middle school. We are seeing enrollment actually decline at elementary. I know this is shocking to elementary people, but our enrollment is actually declining. It's gone down by several hundred in the last couple years. I know. And enrollment overall across the district, this is the first time we've always been going like this, 200 to 300 kids a year. We've seen a flattening of our enrollment overall. We're not really sure if that's a trend or an anomaly, but it's something we really have to watch because enrollment growth is what helps for additional funds along the way. Portland, Beaverton, those districts part of their issue is they have declining enrollment. We don't want to become a declining enrollment district. But we're seeing it flattened. We've flattened that out in our projections, so we're working really hard not to over project our enrollment. If we over project our enrollment, it will come as a great big hit to us in May next year, where they'll take money away from us. So, but because we're having that shift of enrollment, we added 9 to the middle school. We also added 4 special ed caseloads. Not enough, but we had to add some. Not enough. You hear me saying this, right? Not enough, I know. So we added 5 licensed, 11 classified FTE and life skills at middle and high and school learning resource centers, 2.5 FTE and 8 classified in speech and language, 1 in occupational and physical therapy, little bit and a licensed counselor that was just kind of almost a technical adjustment, and then some supply dollars in the special ed budget that they just hadn't had before, mainly for some of the equipment that gets outdated. Then we also are seeing our enrollment of our English language learners decline at the elementary school, but grow at middle and high. Last year we did some shifting of our bilingual IA time because we were having declining enrollment. This year, we could have, based on the enrollment, reduced those about 10 FTE more, but we didn't because we were worried about the service level of the our EL kids in our elementary schools. But we added FTE in the for ELD instruction in middle and high. We also put some dollars in classified reserve because we always are in need of a little more classified after the year starts, and we didn't ever have a reserve pool like we do for licensed staff. Then a little bit with a math instructional coach, which was an expiring grant. And then 15 FTE to reduce, or 15 FTE because of the boundary change process in transportation. So that was a fairly big add in transportation. We purchased the school buses in this year. We're adding the positions in next year's budget because you have to purchase school buses way out ahead. And then the other biggie was we're just seeing such an escalation of emergency events. The after hours, the graffiti, the lockdowns, the bad people on campus or running towards campus. And so we have seen an escalation in our security costs. So we did try to do kind of a technical adjustment there, which ended up being about $500,000 for all the after hours work that we end up doing. Our buildings are a lot at risk overnight. Anyway, so that was what happened on April 23rd. And there were a couple other little things, but those were just kind of the highlights. So what I called April 23rd is almost a current service level. I call it current service level barely. And current service level doesn't mean enough. It means just kind of where we are today. Then we have heard that there will be a state school fund of 9.0. We went from 8.97 to 9.0 billion at the legislature. We don't have that information yet. I know, it's shocking. We still don't know our exact number because we haven't gotten our estimates. But we've also seen a little bit of an uptick in some dollars to the district because our poverty rate has started to increase, and there were some adjustments from the previous estimates the previous years. So this Tuesday night, I came back with another change to the budget, which came with some more ads. And we're still not done yet. It's so up and down, it's a little hard to know what the right crystal ball is. So on Tuesday night, I said we were adding 6 counselors, 1 for each high school, another social worker to make sure that we are even with the number of social workers because 1 was in a limited term position, a 16.88 FTE in behavior cadre. Our goal I'm not sure if we're going to make it across, but our goal is to get a minimum of one embedded behavior cadre at every elementary school. That's our goal. We're so close. I just can't say we're quite there yet, Courtney. But the 16 gets us through about 35 or so. They're doing a little staffing work right now. But our goal is to get to at least one behavior cadre in every school. We think that's really going to be the help with our escalating behaviors, because they get that high level training at as part of the behavior. I know everyone, I don't even have to convince you. You're already nodding your heads. Never mind. I'm kidding. That was, I thought, really an important priority as we had some more dollars. We also added 3 more FTE for ELD at secondary, because we still didn't feel like we had enough for our students learning English. An ad that was looking at our Indian education staff. Our Native American our Native American students are one of our lowest graduation rate. We have a number of people in that office that aren't full-time, and if we can bump them to full-time positions, we think they can do that graduation outreach and dropout prevention. And then increasing our native language specialists and translators to a longer contract, because right now they only work 10 months. They might only work 9. So in July, we don't have any translators on staff. And if schools are waiting for translations, they wait till they're all stacked up in August. So we thought that was a great access. We added a little tiny bit of money to preschool. We generally don't spend anything in preschool out of our general fund. But if the Student Success Act passes, there's going to be a big investment in early learning. And we need to keep the current infrastructure in our preschool programs so that if we get the Student Success Act and we get more slots, we're ready to go for the following year. So it's about $45,000. We did, in the initial proposal, I didn't do the transfer we always do around preventative and deferred maintenance, because I was trying not to cut classroom positions. And in this add back, I put that $1 million transfer back into the budget, because I thought, okay, now's the time, let's get that back in there since we're not going to be in a cutting place. And then we've bumped up the contingency in this proposed budget. The contingency is set to be about 4.84 right now with where I was Tuesday night, and it felt like the right crystal ball strategy for the moment in time where we are, which is we still don't have a state school fund estimate from ODE. We still haven't passed the Student Success Act. And so I kind of came in with a little conservative. But what I told the budget committee is where we are right now, if we don't get any more dollars, I'm not 100% sure we can sustain the positions I've added at this moment into the second year of the biennium. So that's always my goal, to whatever you add in the first year, you can carry it through the second year of the biennium, which is why I bumped a little bit into that contingency line at this moment in the budget process. I know you're probably paying all kinds of attention to what's happening at the legislature. If we could ever get a vote on the Student Success Act, we might know. But it's just, it's probably the trickiest time to really know what to expect. And I still feel very hopeful. But one minute you feel hopeful, the next minute you're like, I don't know. The next minute you feel hopeful. So yeah, it's been a hard budget season, and it's just not going to be done for a while. So if we don't have any more information, this is probably where we will land through the budget committee process. Our budget committee is set to wrap up the 20th or 21st. Hopefully we'll have a little more information before that. If there's a way to bring more ads in, we're still looking at how do you get to an embedded behavior cadre in every elementary school. We're thinking a little bit about our large elementary schools and should they be staffed with a full-time behavior specialist. we're, still looking at, are there other classroom pressure points in the system? We've got a little bit of pressure around some FTE at the high schools that could use some additional classrooms. But we're just kind of holding until we get a little bit more information. The Student Success Act, we did some additional brainstorming here around a few months back. We've done it a couple places. I've got like all of that material gathered, and we've even in some cases started thinking about it with some groups, build 2 or 3 scenarios. And I've kind of stopped that process because what I know right now about the Student Success Act is it won't bring us money next year. And it was great to get the initial feedback, but until we know, I really don't want people to spend time and energy and hope on something until we know for sure. And so once we get to this budget cycle and the legislative process, get the Student Success Act passed, it's going to have to be referred to the voters likely. We'll know more and more, and we'll do a bit more conversation around what's the right plan for those dollars. But it just didn't feel like in April and May that was worth our time until we knew a little bit more about it. Really proud of our legislative process, even though we're stalled out right now, to be this far into a conversation about real funding in Oregon. It's a big deal. If you've been here a little while in education, this has never happened in my career. My career started at ballot measure 5 time. I remember sitting in Perrydale Library talking about cuts around because of ballot measure 5. So it's, you still got to say this is an exciting time, even though you're like, what do I do? So that's where we are. And again, we have 2 more meetings. We've got a week off because we have a board meeting. We'll come back again on the 20th and 21st. If I feel like it's got to be more than feeling. If I have enough data to tell me there's more dollars, I'll come in with another proposal. But again, it's still that bit of a crystal ball proposal just while our legislature is in session. So questions? I'm going to stop right there.
Okay, so just to clarify,
Yep.
the proposed additions,
Yep.
the 6 counselors and
Yep.
so forth, it's at this point, it's just proposed.
I have proposed it. Yes, it's just proposed because that's where we are in the budget process. But I've already released the positions for hiring.
You have,
Yep.
okay.
So whenever I'm confident enough that those aren't going to come out of the budget committee isn't going to take those out.
Okay, and that includes the behavior cadre.
And that includes the behavior cadre. I'm really close to relieving that for hire. So all those proposals, unless something dramatically changes with our financial projection, I don't see the budget committee changing those. They could say we don't want 6. They won't say we don't want 6 counselors, but it's within their rights too. But that was really the counselors, the attention on behavior is really important to our budget committee because we've done that work ahead of time. So I feel confident that as long as our financial numbers stay the same, that we'll go ahead and release those for hire.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, in fact, I might even know that a few high schools are already doing some interviewing around that. I released the counselors at the high school even about a week ago for them to start that hiring because I know it's a very competitive market for school counselors. So I want us to get a jump start. I just said they couldn't actually make an official offer until after Tuesday night. Yes.
So the 9 FTE for middles,
Yes.
that's kind of my wish would be that it's, I'm sorry, the 9 FTE for the middle schools is for all middle schools. Like it's a total of 9.
Yes, but we also did this was not an add to the budget, but we did another shift from elementary to middle in the budget. So there were actually, middle school actually has 16 additional FTE that have already been pushed out into the staffing allocations.
Okay.
Yep, and we did that. I often do a lot of that ahead of the budget process in order to give schools time to plan, as long as I'm feeling confident enough in the numbers. Yeah, we do know there's some going to be some unforeseen things because of the boundary shifts, and we have reserve FTE to deal with those when they come up, because we know they will. Other budget questions? I was thinking, it feels like I had so much to tell you about that. And it really has all happened since April 23rd. So it's not like we've missed weeks and weeks, but it's like, man, I got a lot to tell them. Does any other questions about that? You guys are quiet, but it is. The other thing I want to talk about is yesterday's day of action, and I wanted to know if you had questions of me or comments, things I needed to hear. I do have a couple shout outs. Yes.
Well, there were several staff at one of my schools who were like, well, I'm not going because we're going to have to make it up. And I'm not going because of this. And it's like, no. So there was a lot of like your email and then, different perspectives on it. And then administrators, I've heard this from other people, kind of taking their spin. So I don't know if, I know the union kind of did their own clarification, but it might be nice to have a little more.
We were in a tricky spot because we cannot give away public funds for something like a day of action. So that's why with the association we came up with the language of embedded ways of making up the time. And we were working really hard, but that's a hard concept because people are like, what are you really talking about? And I'm not going to say, please just give away this time. So what we know is that everyone works extra time, especially at the end of the year, and that you're already had a plan to put in that 2.5 hours somewhere over the course of the time between now and the end of the year. But that's really difficult to talk about when you are the one responsible for not giving away public funds. That's why it became so confusing. And I think in most cases we worked it all out and the people who wanted to go went. But it did make us look like, what are they really saying here? And we also didn't want to make every person document every minute, all of that. So there was a little bit of mix up in messages, but we got through yesterday. And today's May 9th. That's the way I looked at it. But yes, and the intent of the language was that people are doing this work anyway. Outdoors school is a great example of you'll have 2.5 hours way made up after outdoor school. There's graduations, there's open houses, there's kindergarten orientations, all those things that are already on the books. It takes you 2.5 hours longer often to pack up your room. All those things are the ways in your mind you go, yep, this is how I've made up that time. Yes.
My staff just appreciated that we didn't have to go into Monday after the school year was over. So thank you.
You're welcome. That was also our goal and why when we were watching the count of how many people wanted to take personal days, we knew that 2.5 hours in most cases could get people down to the waterfront if they wanted to and do the job embedded makeup time. And because we really didn't want to have everyone come back on Monday. So I was really proud of the fact that we didn't have to close school. I was really proud of the fact the way, and I only have a couple examples, so I'm going to say some of the schools, it's probably in most schools, but there were a couple schools who really spent some time even with their kids talking about why there was a day of action, the importance of school. I went into Hoover, kids had red on. They had an assembly on the playground where parents showed up, and they talked a lot about public education. The instructional mentor had done a lesson, kind of almost like a civics lessons for kids around it. It was awesome. And I know that probably happened other places too, but I just happened to have a chance to watch that. I walked in, I'm like, why did all the kids have red on too? Well, they'd done a strategic outreach. If you have any interactions ever with the transportation department nailed it yesterday. I think buses were about, if you think about.
We were so surprised in West End. It was so smooth. It was shocking.
I know.
It was like at the end of the day.
It was awesome. Yeah, they there our routers worked really hard, especially through the weekend. And somebody said to me, "Well, if you can get buses on time on this day, Christy, it's going to be a miracle." And I'm like, "Well, I think we've got it," but I had nothing to do with the miracle. The transportation department and those routers and our dispatchers were amazing. We have about 900 kids that are have a special route, and some of them, about 700 or 800 of them, have to have an adult waiting for them to get off the bus. So we set up the reunification centers. Good practice for us, actually. Reunification centers, we had 8 kids dropped off at reunification centers yesterday out of 700 or 800 kids. Yeah, I'm like, wow. They made a little adjustment on the fly where when they started not having a parent there, the dispatcher in transportation would say, "Hey, we'll call the parent, you drive around the block." They called the parent, and so, there were 15, 20 kids, and boom, they'd be dropped off. Never made it back to a reunification center because they'd made that little course adjustment. I ended my day at transportation yesterday on purpose because I really felt like they were the people who really had the pressure, the total pressure yesterday, and totally nailed it. So I got a chance to sit in the kind of main office with all of them as they were tracking every kid. That's a thing of beauty to watch. Every student was tracked up there. If parents called in, they were running their information. So in some ways it was hard for us and good for us all at the same time, as far as figuring out how do you really get kids home, because the next time we won't have a week of planning to do it. Yes.
I just also want to another benefit. It was part of the original publication, but being able to still provide the free and reduced meals.
Yeah.
I'm already.
Yeah.
Just the upside of being able to provide the free and reduced meals to our students district wide.
Yeah.
So
We got.
shout out to the cafeterias.
Yep. We got another one there.
I might be segueing, and
It's okay.
and I don't know whether you can answer this question or it's the appropriate time to ask it, but I did get talked to by a couple teachers, and the reason why they didn't go to the march was because they said the funding isn't there for the $1 billion thing, so why we shouldn't be putting this out there because there's nothing in place to support it. And I was like, I don't know the answer to that. So I was kind of like, because they were talking about the Republicans hadn't shown up, and so she was trying to argue for it, and I'm like, I honestly can't argue because I don't have any knowledge about it, so I didn't.
Yeah, I can help a little bit with
Okay.
that. So they're on one hand right. There is not the funding, the $1 billion. There's not the funding in the system right now. There's not the taxing in the system at all to support $1 billion ad. What this bill does with the Student Success Act is it is an act for additional funding for education and additional taxing to increase the tax revenue in the state. So it's both. And they did that purposefully because they knew you can't allocate dollars you don't have. So they've worked hard to develop a couple different taxing, which I can't go into those at all. But the taxes, just because I don't understand them totally, but the taxes are part of the bill. And that is why the Republicans have not shown up yet, is because there's some things in that bill they aren't happy about. And they want some additional cost containment. They want some PERS changes before they feel like they can show up to vote. And the only power they have right now is to not show up because they're not in the majority. Yeah. So that's kind of what's going on. But yes, they were right that the dollars aren't there yet. But part of the bill is an increase in taxes in order to get the dollars for public education. It's mainly around a corporate tax before they vote. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly right. And in fairness, $85 million in the $500 million proposed budget for Salem-Keizer is PERS. $85 million in a $500 million general fund budget is PERS. Between PERS, health insurance, and these are all, these are all important benefits to us, but between PERS, health insurance, and our Social Security taxes and stuff, I think it's about $167 million. Yeah. So you can understand why they are worried about that piece of it. Yeah.
That's kind of what the teachers work for.
Exactly. Yeah, and I know, and we're all PERS employees, so we all understand that we're working for that too. So, yep. Yes.
So I don't know if it's helpful feedback or not, but a few people commented on the district email and said that it was very vague, and it said it was a day of Red for Ed, but it didn't actually express like the purpose.
Yeah.
And so just sharing what I'm hearing.
We were we were purposefully vague because we were walking a line of we can't advocate for even though I want to advocate for more funding for education. It becomes a bit of a political thing, and we can't do that piece. So that's why I said, please join me in wearing Red for Ed, but I did not come out and say this is a Red for Ed event, any of that, on purpose, because we can't.
And you can't say the purpose of the walkout or the...
Yeah, and I was working for us to have it not be a walkout, even though they call it that on the news and everything, but technically by the contract, you can't walk out. That's a kind of an unfair labor practice. It's in the contract, you can't. So when you see a bunch of substitutes coming through on a day and you can't operate school, then you can call it an emergency closure. But I couldn't do any advocacy for the Red for Ed walkout type event. Yeah, so that's why. That's why I said, what questions do you have? It's easier to answer them this way.
One of my innocent kids said it was a riot.
It was a riot. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they were.
What's with the riot?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. The police out there. Yeah. It was a very peaceful riot yesterday, I gotta say. Yeah.
I was just going to mention because, I believe the transportation must, with the short notice and everything, had have done like an amazing job because I heard great things across the district. It was just unfortunate because preschool lost transportation altogether.
Yeah.
So one of our classrooms only had 3 students arrive because some of our classrooms are outside of public transportation. So there was no way for parents to get their kids to, they could have gotten to school. There was an offer to have transportation to school, but no transportation home. But then that would have ended up with us having multiple kids because they don't go to the bus garage or anything. They come right back to our schools. So we would have had teachers with quite a few kids probably on their hands.
Yeah.
So that was kind of just
that was a bummer
unfortunate
part of
thing
it.
I wanted to
Yeah,
get to mention,
when we stack up, here's where the good things that happen. A couple of the decisions we had to make wouldn't have been the decisions we wanted to make, and preschool transportation was one of them. The other thing that people don't know about our transportation system is our number of students navigating homelessness. And so if a student lives in a different district, they get to attend here if this is where is their home district, and we transport. So we had about 6 kids from Dallas that we transport one way, and plus a number of other ones out in other areas. So one of the ways we were able to work with that was to Dallas ended up transporting them both ways for us that day. So we had to go through all those exceptions, and preschool was one of that one didn't feel so good. And we couldn't have made all of this happen and do preschool too. We were trying to take out, here's a few exceptions. We also had some students with special needs that we asked parents to transport for us so that we could get them to school, because the whole special needs transportation adds all kinds of pressures on the system.
I just want to say one more thing. It's
Yep.
right along the same lines, but one of the things that I appreciated in watching was that even within our district, so many people had different ways that they wanted to act on this day or
agree.
what they wanted to do. And I felt like it was really promising and encouraging that both sides or all sides were able to come together and one, reflect what we wanted to do personally, but also what rang true to me was the absolute dedication that everybody here has for kids. Because hearing people say, but their food, but their field trip, but their outdoor school, and bottom line, our teachers care so much about our students that we wanted to be able to advocate, but we weren't willing to sacrifice those things for our kids. And I think that speaks volumes about our district and how thoughtful our teachers were about our kids. And I know you know that, but your willingness to also work with that, because I know originally I think there were some like maybe we can leave at this time, but if I leave at this time, I can't get there. Like I know there was some dialogue, and I value that dialogue was taken seriously.
Yeah, we had to work really hard on it and really help schools, because there were schools that didn't dismiss. Sumter was the last school that dismissed, and if teachers wanted to leave Sumter, that was going to be a problem. So it took a lot of conversations.
So I value our employees, but the relationship and working with the district, I think, said a lot on a statewide level. About what
I think our district nailed it, and we did the right thing for kids, and that was in part because the day of action happened at 1:30. We could do that, where in other places they couldn't. So we had a different decision to make. But man, we did what was right for kids. I was thinking it was really, really hard on Tuesday, but people a couple times had to remind me, no, we're doing the right thing, Christy. We're doing the right thing. 42,000 kids are getting to school tomorrow, and they're going to have meals, and we're doing the right thing. Okay, we got this. But yeah, and it was a lot of individual circumstance, and just like the way Hoover chose to express their selves was different than a different, and like I said, I just happened to be at Hoover. It was a pretty good unifying event for us in lots of places, including places like transportation and stuff. The bus drivers were happy yesterday. Yeah, and I don't know why, but they were happy. And they said that the community was happy yesterday. They have people waving at them. I mean, it's probably the sunshine too, but they're like, I don't know why everyone is waving at us today. So they did good work, hard but good work. So thank you. For our educators were amazing. All our AP, IB testing, outdoor schools, field trips. Some field trips came back at 2 and 3 o'clock. We got them home.
Staying was a big one. I mean,
Yeah.
we couldn't have been there if our Magnify didn't stay, and I know there was some frustration that they wanted to be a part of it, but
And those that really wanted to got to, and we could make arrangements for. And those that really needed to worked. Yeah. Okay, any other topic? I don't have anything else on my agenda tonight. Because it's like almost 88 degrees out there. Bob.
Don't forget YouTube shuts down Tuesday. So Monday night, we turn off YouTube for elementary students.
Elementary students. YouTube will be
Using the network as a guest. So on your personal phone, we will communicate shortly afterward how to, as a staff member, override on your own personal devices. So we know some teachers use their own personal device to teach in the classroom, or their cell phone to watch YouTube or Vimeo. We will provide instructions shortly afterwards on how you can still do that. But any guest, in other words, not on a district device, will not be able to access YouTube or Vimeo.
You're like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Staff will be able to access YouTube and Vimeo if you're on your district computer.
And the students, if they log in, won't be able to access.
Secondary students will if they log in to a district.
But we can
website.
track it. We can track their history and see where they've been. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Elementary will not. We're closing it down for elementary. What's that?
my teachers were glad.
Okay.
Like one less level of
One less thing to supervise.
Yeah, the general feedback was really positive that it was time for this.
And there could be a few glitches. So just remind people that this is a good thing, and with that comes a few extra steps on your personal devices and stuff. If you can get the word out and remind people about that, that would be great. Tuesday morning? Okay. The other thing, we had that emergency password change. That was a little while ago, wasn't that long ago, but a couple weeks ago. I think that's going to become a more common occurrence because of the amount of attacks that everyone's getting on their system. And there are districts who people have given out confidential information, including W-2 information and social security numbers, because they've given away some credentials. So I've become very, I know it's a hardship, but if Bob calls me and says, I think we've been compromised, I'm like, yep, password change. I don't even question it. So if people are upset by password changes that are urgent like that, no? Okay. I think it's just the new world. Yeah. Yes.
The morning of, it was a little frustrating with some that the password change didn't go as smoothly as planned, but kudos to technology because I had someone come out like right away before the first hour of school starting, so I was able to get everything going again. Yeah. So the response was really quick. Really appreciated that. Yeah.
We've kept with some really good response times at TIS for events like this, but in general. Remember when it used to take 2 months to get a new... Okay, if you're new and don't remember this, you don't remember this, do you? It used to take 2 months to get an ink cartridge. Mm-hmm. Before Bob got here, there were 2,000 tickets. 2,000 tickets. Am I exaggerating, Bob? Oh, okay. I was a little low. There was 2,500. Yeah. Yes.
Can I ask a question? The Surface Book, whatever the laptops that we have, are we leaving those like we did last year in the classroom? For like if there's classroom moves, we leave that. Are you guys going to send out an email what to do with our? There you go.
Yeah, you'll get and remind people about this. You will get into your communication from technology. It isn't always the most convenient what we're asking you to do with technology over the summer, but we try to during the summer have some things on our system so we can get them upgraded and refreshed and cleaned up and new systems, while also offering you some ability to use them over the summer. So I don't know what his plan is because we haven't talked about it, but in the coming couple weeks you'll get end of year, can you believe this? End of year communication about Surface Books, technologies in your classroom and all of that. Yes?
We were going to talk about the EPR a couple meetings ago.
Yes. Yeah, the EPR. Courtney, you're on that committee.
Yeah, so some drafts have been released, like to committee members to do some sharing, like with people that we run into, and the I believe Suzanne presented to coaches. Do you know?
To get feedback? I don't know that
I don't know
for
because
sure.
I just know my coach had already seen it. We meet tomorrow. We believe it might be our last meeting before things go to the next steps, which I don't know what they are. I personally shared with my staff today, and the feedback was a little bit surprising to me, actually. Okay. But I asked for things like, what did you love? What are you not sure about? What questions do you have? Because I think the biggest thing that's going to happen on the teacher end is why did this happen, or what does this mean, or how is this particular piece of it calculated? Because there's a visual on the front. And I didn't actually have answers for that because it was done on a tech side versus on our side. I can tell you that our goal of the committee, one of the goals was to not change too much on a teacher's end as far as what it looks like for our entry. So it's not like you're going to have a ton of training about how to input information. It will be more about how to read or share the actual printout with families, because the front side is very visual and then the back looks much more traditional. There are some pieces that my building, I think, didn't necessarily understand because They were addressed for bilingual population. So reasons for changing things like the AC for area of concern, that might seem like, why would we change it? But if the translation in another language doesn't translate to a word that is AC, that has a really big impact. So my building, who doesn't do any Spanish teaching, doesn't have as much of a population where that's in our forefront, didn't understand some of that. So I would just say, as it's released or as you see it, if you're having questions like that you're like, this doesn't make sense to me,
Is the
try to reach
timeline
out.
going to be that we're going to change for next year?
Yeah. As far as I understand, unless Suzanne has changed the plan. The plan was to roll out, I believe, before the end of this school year,
So
that
people
you
could
could
see.
see it and get familiar with it. I also know that they're going to be working on a new guidelines. But I meet with Suzanne tomorrow, so
Yeah.
hopefully I didn't give you too much wrong information.
How about after tomorrow, I will ask that Suzanne gives information about what's coming, timeline and all that we send out through Christy Patton.
I think that would be great.
Does that work? Yes.
One really challenging thing in EPR, it's not necessarily this year, is what is a 3 math? What is a 3 Henry? We used to have at least a DRA for that portion. It is getting more and more difficult to talk to a parent and go, well, you're not 3 yet because my gut just says not yet. You know, that kind of thing. We've got to get to some place where parents see what we're talking about. And I don't know if that is a discussion you guys are it's one thing you've been an old dog like me, or kind of like, I know where that 3 might feel comfortable, but it's not certain for everyone.
So that's where one of the conversations has been, we need an EPR guideline that's up to date with what we actually are using. And that is not part of what this committee is actually doing, but Suzanne, I know, knows that has to come with the progress report, if that makes sense. And so one of the things we asked specifically for were like current writing exemplars, for example, to be able to say to a parent, this is what a 3 looks like, here is what your kid's work is like, and here's where that discrepancy is. So it's been voiced very clearly to Suzanne that that's something we need. Maybe in that, Christy, she can address where she is in that process.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What does it look like when my students writing at a 3 or math? All the different, since there's so many areas in math. It's just difficult.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll have
I think for parents, it's going to be
a better.
a much better report. For us, it's going to take a little shift because it looks different. But it's not going to be it's not going to be different on our end of entering. It's going to be different on the output.
So if we'll remind Suzanne that after tomorrow, this group gets an update not only on the rollout of the progress report, but also of the guidelines for that. Correct. Awesome. Yep. Okay. Thank you. And thanks for being a part this year. And we'll have a good end of the school year.